This is Brian with ScreenFiles.com and Review. What I'm talking about today is 2002's Ghost Ship, directed by Steve Beck. And I love this movie. It's a horror movie about a salvage team who happened upon a ship in the ocean, a Mary Celeste, if you will, a ship just floating around. No one knows why it shouldn't be there. They board it, they find gold, Nazi gold, as if they needed more signs that this is going to go tits up. So they find Nazi gold, and things pretty much go from bad to worse from that point. It's an interesting movie. It's a horror film, but, and I know this is going to sound odd, but roll with me for a moment. It's probably the most optimistic horror film I've seen in ages. There's not a cynical bone in this movie's body. And that's really weird for a movie where, let's just say, there are all sorts of interesting deaths. Death Ship, as I mentioned, was directed by Steve Beck. But what's also interesting is that the production design, the director of photography, was Gail Tattersall, who also did 13 Ghosts, which was also directed by Steve Beck. And both movies have this joie de vivre, this very interesting visual palette to them. It's almost as if Dean Cundey, a cinematographer who / director of photography who's worked typically with John Carpenter, his aesthetic were brought to other movies. Gail Tattersall's work, in my eye, is very similar to Dean Cundey's, minus the lens flares and minus the warmth. It's a very pop sensibility. And as a result, Ghost Ship, and to a similar degree 13 Ghosts, is robbed of atmosphere. These are oddly unatmospheric horror movies. I mean, I love Ghost Ship and 13 Ghosts to death, but they're not terribly atmospheric. This is not The Shining we're talking about here. But nonetheless, it's this very pop sensibility to them that I find so enjoyable to watch. It's almost as if Michael Bay were directing a horror movie. And it's so interesting to watch. I mean, I adore Ghost Ship. It's such fun. And in fact, I think it's a great sequel to The Shining in its own way. You have to, if you haven't seen it, check it out. It's really neat. It's such a fun movie. And I think it's fascinating how, the thing about Ghost Ship, it's so well acted. Juliette Margulies, Gabriel Byrne, and there are other actors, obviously. And they just approach this material so seriously. It's so patently absurd, in a good way. I mean, you don't watch Ghost Ship and think to yourself, oh my, this could happen to me at some point. Clearly not. Well, it's about a ghost ship. So clearly this is not in the realm of possibility. But nonetheless, its execution strikes me as very joyous and oddly optimistic. This film is a blast, as opposed to, let's say, something like the remake of House of Wax, which I think has a layer of cynicism underwriting it that makes it less enjoyable despite having a similar level of violence. Because, let's be clear, Ghost Ship is really violent. There's some genuinely, I wouldn't say terrifying violence, but it's not. It's typical horror movie type violence, and which is to say it doesn't make much in a way of sense. For instance, there's a scene where a woman is hit by a hook and it catches her under her chin, which leads to the question, would that actually support her body? Because she's hanging in midair, at least, I would say, 3 or 4 feet off of the ground. First off, would that support her body? Second off, the momentum that the hook hits her in the face, would that not just break her face? I mean that literally. Would that not just break her face and maybe hook into it, maybe not, but it would be just a mess and icky? But that would be so damn visually interesting, so they didn't go that route, and I get that. Another thing that's interesting about Ghost Ship, as well as 13 Ghosts, is Steve Beck's propensity to titillation, pardon the pun. There's female nudity, and you'll notice in these type of movies it's typically female nudity. It's never male nudity, it's female nudity, because you're appealing to a certain part of the audience. You're more likely males. Sure, there are females who will find that attractive, but that's not your goal. You're primarily appealing to males. And the nudity is such that it undermines all the tension and fear that the film was trying to build. For instance, in Ghost Ship, it's a female singer, and she strips to her midriff. So you're looking at her chest, and she's gorgeous, which defeats the whole ghost thing a little bit. The same thing happens in 13 Ghosts, where the ghost is so fucking built. It's nuts. And it's almost hilarious to watch because there's some applied cuts and so on to her body. But she is so hot. She's the hottest looking ghost. Who would not want to try for that? I don't care if she's a ghost or dead or whatever. She's hot. And she's also nude. It's the dumbest thing, but it's so interesting to watch. I mean, I so enjoy this movie. And in that particular instance, if you want to look at how that could have been better done, take a look at Stanley Kubrick's The Shining. When Jack Nicholson's character enters that room, I don't recall the number off the top of my head, but he enters the room and he's met by a ghost. Beautiful woman, nude. But despite it being a full nude, the purpose isn't to titillate. It comes off, at least to me, as a human body. A female human body, an attractive female human body, but still a human body. And then she turns to an old, withered crone. That was effective. As it's done in Ghost Ship, not so much. And in fact, the scene plays more like a nod to The Shining than to have any purpose in the movie. Because if you think about it, the singer died while young. There's no real reason that she should have turned old upon killing one of the crew of the tugboat, but because movie. I've never said that Ghost Ship is traditionally a good movie. It's kind of pulpy and very poppy in its sensibilities, but it's such an enjoyable movie. It's so in the moment. It's so part of the zeitgeist in the way it approaches its material. It doesn't necessarily try to be a Hereditary or The Witch, or should I say The Witch, because the two beats. It doesn't really try to be anything more than it is. And it's actually a really refreshing movie. And again, I adore this movie. I have a copy of 13 Ghosts. Ghost Ship is on Netflix, which I advise you to check out. It is an awesome movie. It's not perfect by any stretch, but for the genre, it's surprisingly strongly well acted, and it's a joy to watch. This is Brian with ScreenFiles.com and Review. Peace.